I recently got married in Estes Park, Colorado, and was tasked with making this wedding arch for the ceremony site. Problem was, Estes Park was over 1,000 miles away from home, and there was no way this big thing was fitting on a plane. This began the great adventure of building the super cool wedding arch that breaks down to fit in the trunk, thus granting a small sedan the ability to drive it over 1,000 miles for a wedding adventure. The journey begins with 4 hideous 4x4x8 pine boards bought at my local big box store. I unnecessarily marked all sides of each 4x4 before milling. You can skip the entire milling process just by spending some time in your local lumberyard or big box store selecting the straightest boards possible. I marked the halfway points at 48 inches, clamped them together so I could cut them all in half at the same time. Using a jigsaw, I did just that before moving to the jointer to obtain a flat face and perfect-ish 90-degree angle on all pieces. This part is honestly not necessary, especially if you're going for the rustic look. I'm just a partial perfectionist, kind of. I wanted all of these to be the same thickness and perfectly square, and I achieved that at the planer. No exact thickness was required, just as long as all of them were the same. The trick is running them all through the planer on the same side all at one time before adjusting the height even lower. It's really satisfying to see these square pieces stacked up next to each other. After they were milled square, I thought my table saw and miter gauge would be perfect for cutting them to length, but as you can see, my blade was just short of cutting all the way through. So, I cleaned up the rest of the cut with a flush cut saw and cut the rest at the miter saw. Why not the miter saw at first, you ask? Because I still haven't built a miter station yet and have to spend some time setting up each cut. This next part is entirely unnecessary, like all the previous steps apparently. I'm only using dominoes for alignment during assembly. If you don't have a domino joiner, you can still do this project. I chose to do this because we were getting married in a conservation area and only had 30 minutes to be on site and had to vacate the area right afterwards. Having the dominoes assist with alignment just reassured a quick assembly when we got there. Once all mortises were cut and I was happy with the finish, I decided to add a chamfer on all the edges, including the connecting portions to add a shadow line. The heavy shadow line will actually hide the inconsistencies where the boards meet. I glued in the dominoes on one side of each connecting piece only. I planned on adding large hinges to each set, so I cut up rough angles on each domino to allow the hinges to shut completely. If they stayed square, the pieces would be unable to shut with the hinges attached. A final piece for assembly, or so I thought, was a basic black latch placed on the opposite side of the hinge to hold things tightly together. You'll see why this was not enough later. I moved on to the top crossbar, using the same idea with the dominoes to assist with alignment. Temporarily connecting the top crossbar and supporting side posts, I recessed a hole in the top and drilled all the way through to easily locate a point for a threaded insert. This hole is slightly larger than the bolt I planned on using, so I had some wiggle room. Using a hex key, I installed a threaded insert on both sides and reinforced it with a little bit of thin CA glue. A quick dry fit with the bolt was reassuring as it pulled both pieces tightly together, creating a firm connection with the head of the bolt completely hidden beneath the recessed portion. I then focused on aesthetic ideas by adding a steep angle to the feet and top crossbar components. To clean it all up, I added a chamfer to every edge that didn't have one yet at the router table. I finally got it completely dry assembled and was far from happy with how wobbly the structure was. So I came up with a quick fix with some scrap poplar I had laying around. I cut angles on the poplar to match the rest of the build and began cutting 2 recessed holes in each piece. One would hold a permanent screw and the other would be for a threaded insert and bolt. Just to match, all 3 were spray painted flat black because poplar paints extremely well. While these were set aside to dry, I moved on to finish. I hate stain and film finishes, so I used pretty much every dark color of Rubio Monocoat I had and mixed them together into one jar to get this darker looking finish. I'll never be able to recreate this. It was as simple as rubbing it on and wiping it off. It only took about 20 minutes to finish the entire build when it came to adding the Rubio. After all pieces were dry, I drove a 2-inch screw into the top hole and used it to mark the location for a threaded insert. Doing the same as the top crossbar, I drilled through both the supporting poplar and 4x4 so I didn't have to measure. Since I easily had my hole marked, I just screw in the threaded insert and tested the fit with a black hex key driven bolt. I would have used these for all connections, but I only had 3, so I had to use the standard socket set for the tops. I plugged the top hole with a poplar dowel just to cover up that hideous screw that was permanent fixture there anyways. My best friend Sean volunteered to throw the pieces in a sedan and drive it out there for us while we flew out. I'm pretty happy with this turnout and how reusable this thing is. Maybe I'll sell it to a photographer or a wedding venue. What do you think? Either way, make sure to like and subscribe for future videos and be sure to hit that notification bell. I got quite a few coming. Thanks for watching and happy building.